Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bitcoin News Weekly Live. I'm your host, Rob Wallace, and we've got a big show for you today. For years, Bitcoin critics had one easy line when their arguments started to collapse. Bitcoin isn't money. I can't even use it to buy coffee. Well, this week, that line died. On Monday, November 10th, Square flipped the switch and turned on Bitcoin payments to roughly 4 million merchants. Overnight, every shop using a Square terminal to sell coffee, cut hair, or pour drinks suddenly had the ability to accept Bitcoin with a single setting in their dashboard. They did not have to spin up a node or buy a hardware wallet. Within hours, videos started pouring in. A latte in Washington, D.C., beer in Oregon, payments from Hawaii to Miami, all settling instantly over Lightning. From the customer's perspective, it felt no different than paying with your phone. From the merchant's perspective, it was faster than Visa, with no 3% card fee, eating away at half the profit on a $10 sale. And then came the breakthrough that almost everyone missed. You can now pay in Bitcoin without paying with Bitcoin. If you use Cash App, you probably have dollars. At the register, if a merchant prefers Bitcoin, you scan the QR code. The app converts your USD to sats behind the scenes, routes the payment over the Lightning Network, and the merchant can choose to receive dollars, Bitcoin, or a mix of both. The customer never has to touch Bitcoin, and the merchant still gets all the benefits. Square's parent company, Block, is not some tiny startup. They processed $241 billion of payments last year. They serve 4 million sellers and have 58 million Cash App users. More than 90% of their volume runs through small businesses with fewer than 10 employees, exactly the people crushed by card fees and the slow death of cash. For those merchants, credit cards are a heavy tax on every sale they make. If your margin is 6% and the card network takes 3%, half your profit just disappears. For years, Bitcoiners tried to orange pill store owners with talk of digital scarcity, the 21 million hard cap, or the history of fiat debasement. None of that matters to someone running an ice cream parlor, trying to make payroll and pay rent. What matters to them is simple. How do I keep more of every sale? Square just gave them an answer. This is what real adoption looks like. Not a zombie company issuing shares to sell Bitcoin exposure. These are real payments at real businesses where margins matter and where Bitcoin solves a real problem. I myself convinced the local guy in the van outside who sells coffee to turn on Bitcoin payments with his Square terminal. And on Friday, I bought an Americano using sats. Bitcoin started as a cypherpunk movement, and it became digital gold, a store of value for those who saw the coming debasement. Now it's stepping into its next role as a medium of exchange, as everyday money. You no longer have to convince someone to understand macroeconomics for them to want Bitcoin. You only have to show them with one setting they can keep 2% more on every sale, eliminate chargebacks, and open up the door to millions of people who want to spend with the Lightning Network. The thought process becomes simple. If I'm already accepting Bitcoin, maybe I should hold a little, just in case it catches on. Bitcoin just moved one giant step closer to becoming what it was meant to be. Rather than just a 2% allocation on a brokerage app, this is peer-to-peer digital cash and the financial rails beneath everyday life. All right. Thank you so much. This was a huge week in Bitcoin. And today I'm very grateful to be joined by Michelle Weekley. Michelle, how are you doing today?
Hey Rob, I'm doing well. Great to be here with you. So much is happening.
Yes, absolutely. So you are the director of product over at Byte Federal. Could you please tell the audience what you do at Byte Federal?
Yeah, absolutely. So Byte Federal was one of the first Bitcoin ATM companies in the US, and I lead their digital product development. We actually have our own payment gateway, and back in 2023, we were working with some beta merchants and we have a gas station in Sarasota, Florida that you could buy Bitcoin with. Buy gas with Bitcoin. And we learned a lot through that process. Mostly how much of a stronghold a lot of these payment processors do have with merchants. So anyway, I do product development there with Byte Federal, and we have a payment gateway. We have a non-custodial wallet. We have a digital on-ramp, a real estate product, and a number of other exciting things coming down the pipeline. So excited to be here with you. Yeah.
You make it easy for people to use
to
and get
use
a
their
hold of
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah,
Cool.
we actually have, Byte Federal has had a Bitcoin treasury for almost 10 years. We use our Bitcoin when we need to. And it's really cool, of course, to see the broader adoption of these things. But it's also cool to work with a group of people who have been, in the game for a very long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you joined Byte Federal when?
In the end of 2022, like going on like 3 years, I've been there, I think.
Cool. Nice. And yeah, so we met in El Salvador. We've seen each other at a conference in Massachusetts. So Bitcoin brings you all over the world. We've run into each other. Very glad to have you here. You've got some strong opinions and would love to hear them on today's news topics, because that's what we do here. Every Monday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, we bring you Bitcoin News Weekly Live, where we take our newsletter, Bitcoin News Weekly, that comes out at 7 a.m. Eastern, straight into your inbox, and we break it all down. So the title for this week is Square Just Killed the Myth That Bitcoin Isn't for Buying Coffee. By opening Bitcoin payments to 4 million merchants, Square has unlocked Bitcoin's power as everyday money. This was absolutely monumental. I think we'll probably go down in Bitcoin history on the same level as like Bitcoin Pizza Day, where the first Bitcoin transaction was made, where Bitcoin was exchanged for a real world good. But yes, this has been very cool to watch. Love to get into it. So let's just go straight there. And we always start off with the adoption section, and we can talk about this. So Square activates Bitcoin payments for more than 4 million US merchants as Cash App rolls out a feature that lets users pay over Bitcoin rails using only their USD balance, allowing even non-Bitcoin holders to pay in Bitcoin. So yeah, I mean, this was absolutely epic news. This week. This has been many years in the coming. I mean, Jack, of course, has been a Bitcoin proponent for over a decade. He, of course, ran Twitter, now X, and at the same time, he started up Square, which is now Block, and they do so many things from the BitKey hardware wallet to the Square terminal now accepting Bitcoin. You can buy Bitcoin on Cash App, and they also have a Bitcoin miner. So they are in every single facet of Bitcoin. And Jack's big thing is Bitcoin can't just be a store of value, or else it dies because it gets neutered, right? You need to be able to use it in everyday life, at merchants, when you go out, when you get a haircut, when you go buy a coffee. You should be able to spend your Bitcoin. So, Michelle, did you see this week, and what was your impression of the rollout?
Yeah, of course I saw this, and it's super, super exciting to see. The payment processors really have a stronghold on merchants in the US. And so I think that has been one of the biggest barriers to adoption is that if you were a merchant or a small business and you wanted to accept Bitcoin, you had to kind of do it on the side with your own wallet. There was no way to integrate it into the existing system, which of course has, it creates more problems than it solves because you have inventory issues, you have tax implications that aren't being calculated, whose wallet's being used, things like that. And so this is really a solution that has been needed is for the payment processors to integrate Bitcoin. And that, of course, immediately opens up the ability for the merchant, the business, to accept Bitcoin without having all of these other complicated steps, or just even if they're not complicated, we have a payment processing gateway that makes it very easy, but it was still a parallel system. And so Square turning this on for everybody who's already a customer of theirs is just really, really big news. I agree with you. It's going to go down in Bitcoin's history, and that it's vital for Bitcoin as an asset class to be both a store of value, but also a medium of exchange. And this is just a huge step forward.
Yeah, you're so right, especially with the tax implications. Like, there are plenty of people who would love to accept Bitcoin when they're selling their everyday goods, but you got to mark down what was the price when they gave it to you, and it causes a lot of headaches. This makes it so simple. You could just go into your Square terminal where you already accept credit cards, turn on the Bitcoin payment, and then all the accounting is just done for you right there. You can choose how much of the Bitcoin payment you want to keep as Bitcoin. It can be 100%, it can be zero, or a mix in between, as you can see right there. And you can create your own Bitcoin treasury as a company, keep it on the wallet on the Square terminal. You can also, people who don't even have Bitcoin, the merchant can choose to accept it, the payments through over Cash App in Bitcoin, right? So it's absolutely so cool because I think that's really what's going to drive Bitcoin as a medium of exchange is when the merchants prefer it, right? When they say,
Yes.
oh, you get a 5% discount if you pay in Bitcoin. And so
Right.
now that people don't even need to have Bitcoin to begin with to be able to get that discount by sending the merchant Bitcoin for the goods. Really, really cool stuff. As we said, 4 million merchants. There's 58 million people on Cash App who can buy the Bitcoin, then go out to these 4 million merchants, use the Bitcoin in the real world. And another huge aspect of this is the fact that it is they really mobilize the Bitcoin community, right? I mean, if you are any company and you want to have an activation, the number one thing you can do is go and find the most passionate people who are already out there in the world and just turn them on to be your unpaid advocates for this. And so one way they did that is by turning on the map within Cash App, where you can see all the different Square sellers in your neighborhood that accept Bitcoin, right? And so as I said briefly in the intro, I had my local coffee guy turn on Bitcoin payments on his Square terminal, and I mean, you do it, you send Bitcoin, and we're just smiling, right? We're all happy. It felt good. Bitcoin price might have been down a little bit, but who cares? I'm actually using Bitcoin in the real
Right.
world with another human being and helping him get started on the Bitcoin process. It was felt really good, and to mobilize the community like this, it was just so awesome to see.
Yeah, it's been super awesome. And one thing I think that's important for Bitcoiners to remember is that understanding Bitcoin and coming into Bitcoin is a process, right? So I've seen some shade thrown around that that Square allows you to settle instantly in dollars, which is a feature that we saw was very commonly requested. But just look at what has happened with Stake and Shake. In a very short period of time, they started accepting Bitcoin on their own, and in the beginning, they were settling everything into dollars. But so quickly they learned the value of Bitcoin that they now created a strategic reserve, and they are no longer immediately converting everything to dollars. So I think, remember what it was like when you first got into Bitcoin. Remember that these things take time to learn, and, don't let that stop you from orange pilling people or from letting them have their own journey. Like, it's okay if merchants are settling in dollars to start with, because eventually they will hold the Bitcoin. It's just the natural process.
Yeah, it is absolutely a process. And I think that's been a conversation too online is like what's the most effective way to orange pill these merchants, right? So actually Spiral, the Bitcoin development initiative started by Jack and as part of the whole block ecosystem, they put out lots of reading material that you can just hand out to merchants, Square merchants. They also are handing out a little grumpy Bitcoin plushies that you can give to the merchant when you talk to them about this. But the biggest thing is solving that pain point, right? Making sure that they no longer have to spend that 3% to the credit card company for doing a transaction, which is literally just highway robbery and is really life or death for these small merchants, right? Again, if your profit margin is 6% and the credit card company takes half of that, it cuts your standard of living in half if this is what
Yeah.
you live off of, right? So yeah, it's news. Excited to see how this plays out over the uh, weeks and months and years ahead. But this is big, really big for Bitcoin adoption, and I think everybody should be talking about this because, boy, it's been a long time coming, and now it's finally here. Very cool.
Super exciting.
And great. So then the adoption section, I love it. It's all feel good stories, right? This was very interesting. Hesperides University just launched the world's first fully online English taught 60 ECTS Bitcoin Masters program, opening in January 2026, with courses spanning from cryptography to mining, energy, and public policy. So Bitcoin mining used to be, or Bitcoin in general, was very taboo in academic circles, but now we've got our very own master's program. This Hesperides University is, I believe, in the Canary Islands off of Spain. This program is completely online, so anyone can take it. Enrollment starts in January, so if you are interested, you get prepared. But yeah, I mean, the topics include everything from cryptography, energy use, economics, philosophy, journalism, and real world applications. What do you think about this story? What do you think
I
about
think
Bitcoin getting a
this is
master's?
so exciting and so cool. You know, like you said, a lot of the academic institutions have been very anti-Bitcoin, but eventually they're going to have to come around, and this is a huge step in the right direction. And what a great resource for people that are maybe new or just interested in learning more about Bitcoin. You know, it's super, super exciting.
Yeah, and I mean it's funny, like they're in the Canary Islands, right? It's an online
Yeah.
program, so anybody can take it. But it like Madeira is right there off
Yeah,
the coast of Africa, but a Spanish state, as well as the Canary Islands. So it's funny how like the periphery places are the first places to really accept and go
right.
all in on Bitcoin, and it spreads to everywhere else. But very excited. If anybody joins in this program next year, I would love for you to hop on and give us a review and let us know what you learned, and let us know how beneficial this Bitcoin Masters is in your journey. So
Well,
then,
it's interesting that they are right there near Madeira.
yeah,
You know, there was event in Madeira was it last year? Time is flying.
23 actually.
23. But that was an amazing event, and even then a couple years ago it's a great community that they have there. So many people were accepting Bitcoin. So I don't know if they were involved in the efforts to get this course going or not, but it is cool to watch these hotbeds develop.
Yes. No, I'm sorry. The Bitcoin Atlantis and Madeira was 2024.
Okay.
Were you there? Yeah.
I was there. Yes,
Nice. Yes, me too. Yeah,
you
a
were
great
there.
event, epic event,
It
right?
was amazing. It was big.
Yeah, in a football stadium.
Right.
A lot of great people. It was around it was pre-halving, right? But we were like setting the all-time high right as we were leaving that event. Great vibes. Felt like sort of like a family reunion type of feeling. They only do it every 4 years now, so the next one is going to be in 28 in Madeira for the next Bitcoin Atlantis. But great event. If you're a Bitcoiner, you want to go use Bitcoin in everyday life, go to Madeira. Check it out. Great vacation
Yeah.
spot, amazing scenery, epic, epic, epic cliffs, and just jungle and just everything. So highly recommend Madeira. And then we go to the central banks. The Czech central bank bought $1 million in Bitcoin and other digital assets to run a multi-year pilot testing how central banks can acquire, hold, and manage crypto. So, big news out of the Czech National Bank. These guys brought up the idea of dabbling in Bitcoin last fall. I believe it was after or right around the election of Trump. So Bitcoin was buzzing in the air. And these guys they're thinking forward. Europe is known to be pretty stodgy, pretty anti-Bitcoin, very pro CBDC, but not a big fan of the orange coin, the freedom coin. But the Czech Republic, these guys have a long history with Bitcoin. We were just talking about Prague. So before we dive into the details of the story, tell the people your impression of the Czech Republic when you were there.
Yeah, I was telling you before we recorded about my time in Prague, and I had said that Prague is really one of probably my favorite city at this point. I was at Prague, I guess not this year, but last year already. Time is really flying by. Um, but it's an incredible city. It's sort of, you know, it's a country that is Europe before Western Europe was ruined, before the EU came in and destroyed everything with their terrible policies. And so, Prague is beautiful, has amazing people, amazing food, and now amazing policy. And this is actually not surprising. I'm not surprised one bit to see them adopting Bitcoin and to be a leader in this. Prague's an incredible place, and it's really an example of what can be. I think there's a strong contrast, obviously, right, between what we're seeing in the Czech Republic versus other places in the EU where they're banning Bitcoin outright. They're trying to tax unrealized gains. There's Mika, where they're just hyper tracing everything, and it's really the precursor to banning self custody. because you have to register all wallet addresses. So it's just a really hostile environment in the EU and Western Europe. And so obviously what Prague is doing is just the total opposite of that. And it's kind of like the meme, like which way Western man.
Yes. Do you want to go the way of Lagarde or the way of the Czech National Bank? So the details of this are pretty interesting. I mean, they're not going full all out Bitcoin. This is a test portfolio. They took $1 million, which is still a pretty small portion, of course, of a central bank's reserves. But they're testing out how all this stuff works. So they bought Bitcoin. The majority of the $1 million went into Bitcoin, but also a US dollar based stablecoin and a tokenized deposit. They said not an investment, and they want to learn about blockchain technology and the possible implications on the future of finance. So what's interesting, of course, is that the Czech Republic is not part of the European Central Bank. They have their own currency, the koruna. It is still legal tender there. And what's super interesting about inviting Bitcoin into your national reserves, I mean, we all believe that Bitcoin is better money, right? That it is way better than any other fiat and better than any money that we've come across yet. So naturally, over time, Bitcoin will compete with your local currency, but those who adopt it first will gain most of the benefits. So these guys are being very forward thinking. So yeah, right now this $1 million is just 0.0006% of their total assets. But this is a historic step nonetheless. So when the central bank governor first floated this idea back in January of this year, skeptics such as European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde opposed the plan. However, the Czech Republic Central Bank is independent, not having joined the Eurozone, and was able to go through with it. So we actually have a video of Lagarde saying that she wasn't too happy when she first heard this news. This is from earlier in the year. Check out her response.
The result, I'm confident that reserves will not enter, that bitcoins will not enter the reserves of any of the central banks of the General Council. I had a good conversation with my colleague from the Czech Republic, and I leave it to him to make whatever announcement he wants to make, but I'm confident that he's convinced, as we all are, of the necessity to have liquid, secure, and safe reserves. Thank you.
You hear that? Liquid, secure, and safe. She's not a fan of Bitcoin. We're not too big a fan of her. But hey, a bank right under her nose just accepted Bitcoin as reserves. So
yeah, I think if Lagarde disagrees with what you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, right. You're on the right path. It's she, of course, so many great lines from her. In due course, and she's been a huge hater, but I mean, it's her job, right? She's also a convicted criminal, financial criminal, and aren't they all? And it's a big club. We ain't in it, but she sure is. And she said her son has invested into Bitcoin, but she is still not a fan. Christine, if you want to hop on the show, you want to talk Bitcoin, please let us know. But you're going to be left in the dust, girl, if you don't change the way you think. And so now we go to our legal section. China. You have experience with China. I have experience with China. We actually are two Americans who actually went across the Pacific and lived there for some time. And this is a big deal. Bitcoin is now in the middle of geopolitics, the fight between China and America. It's been a Cold War, I guess you could say, but it's heating up. It's going from a trade war to an economic war, and now we've got Bitcoin in the middle of it all. So what am I talking about here? China's CVERC, their online security division, claims the U.S. government hacked and controlled Liu Bei's 127,000 stolen Bitcoin long before the 2025 seizure announcement, contradicting the DOJ's assertion of a lawful operation. So you might be scratching your head thinking, what is going on here? Let me break it all down. So there was this criminal, the head of the Prince Group. He's a Chinese citizen by birth, but he was running this operation in Cambodia, and they were doing a giant pig butchering operation. That's where they have people go on apps like Telegram or WhatsApp. They reach out to you. You might be getting these texts like, hey, like, what are you doing for lunch today? They start up a conversation. They romantically get you interested, and then they convince you to do some investment scheme. They say, hey, I just made all this money buying Bitcoin. Why don't you buy Bitcoin on this platform that I show you? And you can make a lot of money too. And so they stole millions upon millions of dollars through this operation. But not only were they running a scam, they were running like a literal torture operation, right? Where they would kidnap people, trap people who were just looking for a job. They would get them in this compound. It was locked down with barbed wire and guards, and they would beat these people and force them to run these pig butchering scams and steal money from people in the West. And this has been going on for years. And this guy had a huge criminal empire. He had Chenju, I believe his name is. He had a bank, a Bitcoin mining operation, multiple properties, of course. And this was a big deal. And he had bought in a lot of sway and influence with the government of Cambodia. And that's how he was able to run this criminal empire. Well, America has cracked down. He is still on the run. But they have sanctioned him, his bank accounts, his businesses, and a big part, the biggest part, the most material part of this crackdown on this guy who's still on the run, Chincha, is that America said that they were able to seize 127,000 Bitcoin as part of this operation. And then the question is, well, how does that happen? Well, Lubian, his mining pool, which randomly shut down in 2020, I believe it had like 6% of global hash rate. Like it was a really big mining pool, very, very material in what they were doing there. But they randomly shut down and their Bitcoin went missing. And so now China is accusing America to having hacked that Bitcoin. Of course, not the Bitcoin network itself, but they were storing the Bitcoin with low entropy, with, I think, a self-rolled wallet. And they were able to, China is accusing America of using a state-sanctioned hacking group to take their Bitcoin, and now they say that it was part of this 2025 seizure, but it really, all this Bitcoin moved back 5 years ago. So America stole this Bitcoin from this guy who's this arch criminal 5 years ago, and now they're coming out with this big operation saying that they just did it. And so now China's mad. They say, hey, you can't, he's our criminal. He's not your criminal. He's our criminal. You can't be stealing our criminal's Bitcoin. And so now this is elevated to the level of geopolitical relations. Pretty crazy stuff. Pretty crazy story. Want to hear your opinion on China, America, Bitcoin, and what's going on here.
Yeah, this is a really crazy one, isn't it? You and I have been talking about China geopolitics. Actually, I think we talked in El Salvador about China and how interested in Bitcoin I thought that they were. I think some of these stories weren't public yet. There's a lot of moving parts to this one. You know, one thing I think people need to understand is that anything that a Chinese citizen does is essentially sponsored by the state, like the CCP. You don't Americans, I was going to say it doesn't work the same. Anything that someone who is of Chinese descent is doing, whether it's running a legitimate business or running this criminal empire, it is to some extent state sponsored, right? You can't do anything. You can't even go and do a strategic partnership in China without getting sign off from a government official. So there's no doubt in my mind that China was aware of what was happening, monitoring it very closely. And if you consider that, then I think it's not that wild to think that the US would have been in turn like monitoring the criminal activity and possibly going in and trying to seize those coins. So as crazy as it is, this is very believable to me. And if we're going to get into these like hacking warfares, then let the US win, right? Like, I hope they stole the coins. I hope we have them. Do you want China to have them or do you want the US to have them? I also think this is probably like not going to be an outlier. I think we're going to see a lot of at least attempted hacking and stealing and seizures as Bitcoin grows as an asset class, and as countries admit that this is a very serious asset that they want to have in their reserves, the hostility and the insanity is just going to grow.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know what you think, if you think the US did seize the coins, or like what your take is, because I know you were over there as well.
Yeah, so I lived in China from around 2011 to 2014, and that was pre-Xi, right? And I think things really changed a lot when Xi took over, especially the relationship towards foreigners, Americans, visas, working in the country as a foreigner. Yeah, things really took a quite drastic shift. They were very open when I was there. I mean, it was like right after the Olympics, and the World's Fair was in Shanghai. And so they were very arms wide open. Americans, oh my God, you speak a little Chinese, amazing, so cool. Very happy to have you there. But it's definitely taken a more adversarial tone over the last decade. And it's clear, I mean, from everything that's going on, is that this is the story of the 21st century, right? China, America, the Thucydides trap here, right? I mean, the Spartan and Athens, and who will gain supremacy in the 21st century? That is the main question here, and Bitcoin is going to play a part of that, and they're going to want to have as much as possible, because the same thing's going on with them in England, right? There was a scammer who stole 60,000 Bitcoin, fled to the UK, then was trying to launder it by buying property, got caught, and now her Bitcoin was seized. She was a Chinese citizen, of course, and yeah, that's 60,000 Bitcoin. This is 120,000 Bitcoin. You add them together, that's like what 1% of the network, right? So that's a big deal. 1% of all the Bitcoin in the world is tied up between UK, US, and China fighting over it right now. This is a story. It's not going to go away. Be very interested to see. Wonder, like, behind the scenes, what those communications are like right now between the two parties, the State Department and in Beijing. But yeah, it's wild. It's crazy. So yeah, researchers from Arkham found that Lubian wallets were vulnerable to hacking because they utilized poor random number software. The flaw allowed hackers to correctly guess private keys and steal the coins. So one technical report connected the issue with a bad random number generator known as blah, 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 PRNG, demonstrating that the wallet software used by the Chinese miners did not make use of sufficient randomness in generating private keys. So, I mean, again, Bitcoin, when done properly, is extremely hard to confiscate. But if you do it in the not smartest way, or do cut corners, you're leaving yourself open towards being brute forced by a nation state when you are creating your private keys, or doing it with a hardware wallet that uses the right entropy to create those keys for you. It's crazy stuff.
Wild.
It's wild.
And it's really interesting. You know, I was there after she took over, 2016, 17. And it's fascinating how quickly things changed. Of course, they changed again going into COVID, and it's just become more and more hostile. And I think it's going to continue in direction. We saw, she changed the constitution over there so that he could continue to rule. And I think that is all we've talked about China on this trajectory of global dominance. And I think if you look at the changes that have all been made, it's kind of supports that. So, but at the same time, they are well known for taking shortcuts. We saw what happened with the ghost cities collapse. There's a giant bridge over there that just collapsed. And so in some ways, this is like a similar story where they are ruthless in many ways, but also kind of cutting corners and losing out in the end, right? Because if you don't have your Bitcoin stored securely enough, so another nation state is going to swoop in and steal it. So
yeah, good point. And also demographics too, right? I mean, they have over 1 billion people. Some say it's 1.2 billion in China right now, but by the end of the 21st century, that number looks to be cut in half or less, right? So between 500 to 600 million. So that's a big deal. And they've gone all in on robotics, humanoid robotics, to try to fill this labor gap. But they've brought hundreds of millions of people out of poverty over the last 40, 50 years. But the question is, will they be able to maintain that position and continue to grow if their demographics don't allow them to support that growth anymore? So interesting story. I studied international relations, sort of I don't know if you'd say worthless degree, but not the most valuable on the marketplace, other than it gave me experience with China, allowed me to see the world and open my eyes to this great game that is being played right now before our very eyes. And you never know what's going on in terms of bots online. I mean, China was just caught using Anthropic to spy on like 30 of the largest corporations in the world, right? So there's lots of stuff going on behind the scenes that we have no idea about.
Yeah, it's wild. And I think it's only going to escalate as AI rapidly develops, you know.
Speaking of things happening behind the scenes that we do not know about, this was sort of a bombshell that dropped at the end of last week. Jeffrey Epstein, according to newly released emails, helped fund the MIT Digital Currency Initiative, with part of his donations going directly to early Bitcoin core development. The big JE, the man who did not kill himself, was giving money to MIT back in 2015 to their director, Joichi Ito. He was running the MIT Media Lab, and they had a digital currency initiative. And so the money was funneled to the Media Lab and then to their digital currency initiative. And then from there to Bitcoin core development. It's very interesting what was going on at the time that this happened. Post Satoshi, there was the Bitcoin Foundation led by Gavin and some other well-known Bitcoin core developers. But then that all blew up in 2015 because they didn't like the direction it was going, and they were in need of money. And then MIT stepped up and gave the money. It just happened this money came from Epstein himself. What do you think is going on here? You've had some things to say about Bitcoin Core in general over the last couple of weeks, months, and now we have this come out that big old JE was giving him money.
Yeah, so I reserve my right to change my mind here, but I think my hot take is that I don't know that this is as hot of a take as people want it to be. I have a lot of criticisms for Core, a lot of things that have happened with Core, and in particular, sort of the way that it's functioning now. But I also care very much about the truth and honesty. And I don't know that there's really enough evidence. Everyone is so quick right now to use Epstein to smear anything that they can. And I don't know that there are really like that strong a ties between the donations and how it filtered down to Core. Of course, I love a good conspiracy. I'm a big Whitney Webb fan. I'm not saying that there's nothing there. I'm just saying, like, be cautious about writing everything off as, oh, it's crazy. We see people like, I don't know how much I believe it. I think a lot of it is bots, but we see a lot of accounts on X talking about like, oh, I'm selling everything. This is crazy. It's Epstein coin now, whatever. And I think, I caution people that are new in the ecosystem to believe any of that. I think almost just ignore everything that you hear. But Epstein famously donated millions and millions of dollars to nearly all of the institutions. And so I think that it's not fair to like hyper focus on this MIT donation, because if you look at the money that went to Stanford, UPenn, really all of the elite institutions, you could find a connection back to this massive Epstein money. for so many different things, so many different projects, so many different technologies. And so I think I don't want to muddy the valid criticisms of Core with these broad strokes of, oh, it was Epstein, and that's, somehow tarnishing what's happening now, because I just think that that is too broad of a stroke. And I don't want to say that there was absolutely, without a doubt, nothing nefarious going on, but I think there's a little bit of, Epstein gave money to everyone, and probably specifically for these purposes, so that whatever played out, they could retroactively say, well, we were involved in that, or the wrong people were involved in that, or just sort of paint the narrative however they wanted to. And so we have to be careful about falling for that.
100%. I think it's very clear from the way that this played out that Core had no idea that this money was coming from Epstein, right? This was money from MIT, and it just so happened that MIT was getting money from Epstein. But you're also, I think the more interesting angle on all this is that Epstein had an interest in Bitcoin, though, right?
Did he?
Did he? This money was for the Digital Currency Initiative, which was giving money to Core. And I think he's obviously a money man. He was moving money for certain players around the world, and Bitcoin does all that. There's also emails of him asking Bannon later in, I think, 2018, 2019. Steve Bannon's very close to Jeffrey Epstein. Pretty weird. But asking him about taxes and how to sell, asking about digital assets and Bitcoin. But this, I want to share this because this was, I think, very interesting. Just how deep this rabbit hole goes, right? So Epstein emails reveal that cryptocurrency entrepreneur Brock Pierce, co-founder of stablecoin and issuer Tether, discussed Bitcoin with former U.S. Treasury Secretary Larry Summers at Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan townhouse. According to the emails, Pierce described himself as the most active investor in Bitcoin, while Summers expressed cautious interest, noting reputational risks from the market's volatility. Former Secretary of Treasury Larry Summers, also former head of Harvard, Brock Pierce, he was a child actor. He also was fundamental in the founding of Tether, and he also here was part of the reason why the money went to Bitcoin Core in the first place is because of Pierce. What happened? Prior to declaring bankruptcy, the Bitcoin Foundation saw a mass resignations over the confirmation of former child actor and co-founder of the digital entertainment network, Brock Pierce, as its director. In the early 2000s, Pierce and his buddies did some very bad things, and then there was mass resignations from the Bitcoin Foundation, leading them to need money, and then Epstein's money came in. But the rabbit hole goes even deeper. This guy, Cowboy Crypto, quoted our post about this over the weekend and wrote this: Brock Pierce was personally invited and attended Epstein's Mindshift conference on his island in 2011 before he founded Tether in 2014. Pierce was an unlikely attendee with a group that included a NASA computer engineer, an MIT professor of electrical engineering, and a Nobel laureate in theoretical physics. MIT professor Al Seckel co-organized the Mindshift conference, which began in 2009. Seckel happened to be life partner of Isabel Maxwell, which was Ghislaine Maxwell's sister. Her father was Mossad spy Robert Maxwell, who just so happened to buy the New York Daily News, and Goldman Sachs helped him do that. Gary Gensler was head of the Goldman Sachs Media and Mergers Acquisitions Department in New York from 1984 to the end of 91. Gensler would later go on to teach blockchain at MIT before becoming chairman of the SEC.
It's a small world, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a small world. It's a big club, and we ain't in it.
That's right.
These guys are, holy moly. This dude, Brock Pierce, what's going on with this guy? Oh my God.
This is crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. Bitcoin is, of course, it's apolitical. It's agnostic to all these things. It's just a protocol. It's ones and zeros. It's a code on the internet. But there's people, of course, who want to use it as a tool, as we all do, and that's the thing. It's permissionless. It's open. It's anybody. Bitcoin is for enemies. Bitcoin only works as well as it does because anyone who has connection to the internet can be a part of the network. And just the more things we learn, man. This is a big topic, not just in Bitcoin circles right now, but of course with the U.S. government and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and then Trump comes out last night and says release the files after saying for weeks, months, do not release the files. It's a nothing. It's a Democratic hoax. So who knows what's really going on? But it's deep. Do you have a?
It is wild. I mean, I think the conclusion is the same as it is with like the China and the hacking, and that is that everybody is going to want your Bitcoin, and so make sure that you have it stored really securely. But the Epstein stuff, this story is just twisting and turning, and I don't know what's going on with Trump. It's a huge disappointment. I think if there was anything really there, that it would have been released, one side or the other would have used it as ammunition, and that probably all of the files that did exist were destroyed a long time ago. I mean, they're not going to, if this was an intelligence operation, they're not going to be like loose with the information and the files. I have no doubt that was all destroyed a long time ago. But I would still like to see some people go to jail, and we haven't seen that happen yet. So it's
have you in your past ever run up to against any intelligence agents suspected?
Well, I lived in DC for almost 14 years. So I worked with a company for several years. I had my own clearance because we recruited for very highly secured jobs. I dated a guy who was supposedly a teacher. I dated him for several years, and he turned out to work for Interpol. So he had what's called a lifestyle clearance, which means that they can spy on everyone in your life. And of course, I was in his life. Yeah. So these are the things that happen when you live in DC. And like, I didn't realize at the time how much I was learning, just like through osmosis. You go have a drink, you're talking to somebody, turns out he's a Secret Service agent, this kind of stuff. And so in retrospect, like, there's so much that I learned about how this all works that has really become like vital to the way that I process everything that's playing out now. And so I tried to flee, I left DC and tried to get away from it all, and of course got recruited even more deeply into this ecosystem. But ultimately it led me to Bitcoin, which I still believe is the exit. Of course these people are interested in Bitcoin because they're not idiots. They might be criminals and terrible people, but they're not idiots. So.
Wow, that's insane. You had a boyfriend who was part of Interpol without you even knowing it. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, he literally go to the university every morning, and then I don't know how exactly. I've heard that there were shuttles. I've heard that there were underground tunnels, but he would go from the university to a secure location, which is where his office actually was. And I learned this after we broke up. We got in a bit of an argument, and he told me a few things that I wasn't supposed to know. But he had a computer. This was in it was before 2015, and he had a computer with like a fingerprint access, right? And I was like, this is kind of weird for a teacher to have. And we traveled together once. He had a sat phone, which is when I learned, that his job was not what I had thought that it was. So they're doing wild stuff. Anything that you can imagine, anything that you hear as a rumor, it's probably true. That whatever's in reality is probably crazier than the rumors that leak out.
Unreal. Well, one thing you said that holds true is that they all want your Bitcoin. So you better get your Bitcoin and secure your Bitcoin. And where do we like to get our Bitcoin? We like to get our Bitcoin from the sponsors of this show, Rhino. So before, getting access to Bitcoin financial services has been slow, clunky, and you had to do it across multiple platforms. But Rhino is changing that. Rhino is the next generation Bitcoin banking app built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Here's what you can do all in one place. You can buy Bitcoin with some of the lowest fees anywhere. That means more sats for every dollar that you spend. Make payments over the Lightning Network. Send it instantly with near zero fees. You can also send cash globally, fast and easy, to friends or family, wherever they might be. And you can set up automatic savings so you can stack sats on your schedule and build wealth over time. And Rhino is just getting started. Soon you'll be able to pay bills, borrow against your Bitcoin, and even save for retirement, all seamlessly within the app. And of course, security is the top priority over there. Rhino protects your Bitcoin with biometric verification, 24/7 fraud protection, and the confidence of knowing your Bitcoin will never, ever be rehypothecated. For long-term holders, you can also secure Bitcoin using a single or multi-signature custody solution, giving you full control. So go ahead today, go to rhinobitcoin.com, or just tap the link below in the YouTube description. And if you use the code Bitcoin News when you sign up, Rhino will drop you $10 in free Bitcoin right into your account just as you get started. Rhino is built to keep you in control of your Bitcoin every minute of the day. Big shout out to Rhino. Very thankful to have them as part of this whole operation here. They're awesome. Check out the app. It's really useful, and it's everything you need all in one place. So, Michelle, that was pretty heady conversation we just had about Epstein and what's going on, these spies. Great to have you to break it all down with us. And as we're going towards the end of our show here, let's bring it back to Washington, D.C. Let's talk about politics, what's going on over in our nation's capital. One interesting thing from a political standpoint, there was just, of course, Bitcoin Historico adopting Bitcoin. This is Bitcoin month in El Salvador, and lots of big announcements coming out. And one of them was this: Simple Proof is partnering with El Salvador's Foreign Affairs Ministry to timestamp public records on the Bitcoin blockchain, making government documents tamper-proof and permanently verifiable. So yes, this was Simple Proof is a development from Peter Todd, and now they partnered with El Salvador to do this immutable proof service. They first used this at the Guatemalan elections, where the votes were stored. They were cast, and then they were recorded on the Bitcoin blockchain to make sure that they were tamper-proof and permanently verifiable. But yes, do you think this is the future of government records, that they will be storing things on the Bitcoin blockchain?
Well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? With all the arguments going on about arbitrary data, and I have to say I'm still sort of undecided on this. I think a storing data like this on a blockchain is inevitable. I don't know if it makes sense to store all of this data on the Bitcoin blockchain or if it's another technology. My understanding of Simple Proof is that they do not require, like, all of the contentious changes that Core has just made, that Simple Proof came out before that, and therefore it doesn't bloat the chain. It's not like a ton of data.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. It's also a little bit dangerous, in my opinion, because once you say that something is absolutely final and it is what it is, it can be a tool of an authoritarian regime, right? To come in and say, for example, what happened in the US with like the 2020 election, to say, no, you can't question it because we have absolute results. And so I worry that, like, inscribing something in this way can be as dangerous as it can be good. I think, use paper ballots. Like, in some sense, I think we need to go back to the simple basic ways that you work before you could mess with anything technologically. Use voter ID and use paper ballots, and then we don't have to rely on technologies. So I'm glad that they're looking to do things more securely, but I don't know that I'm confident that this is the answer, to be honest. Like, just because they say this is the final result, like, okay, but where did those numbers come from, right? Like, before we them final, are we auditing them? Are we believing in the process? I think those things are so much more important than just giving something a final stamp of approval.
Yeah, I mean, and governments love to change numbers after the fact too, right? I mean, the amount of economic data that is revised months and
Right.
months afterwards. That we just found out that like 1 million less jobs were made under the last year of the Biden administration just recently. Right
Right.
after revision. So, I mean, all these numbers seem pretty airy fairy and sort of yeah, able to be resolved. So will they be willing to put money or put a data on a blockchain that shows that it can't be changed? I don't know. Yeah, in terms of the amount of data that this takes up on the Bitcoin blockchain, I think it's pretty negligible. I do think it could be useful in some cases. It'll be what's interesting is that El Salvador is moving forward with this, right? I think Guatemala first experimented with it with an election about 2 or 3 years ago, and now El Salvador is finding it useful. And so El Salvador is trying a lot of things. I mean, there's been a lot of questions with the IMF loan and their Bitcoin policy and whatnot. But I mean, what just happened with this Bitcoin Historico showed very clearly that the government is still backing the Bitcoin initiative. And yeah, they're experimenting with AI. They just got a bunch of GPUs delivered there from NVIDIA. So interesting things. It's good to see El Salvador experimenting in this way, at least, and let's see if it's beneficial in the long run.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm a big fan of what El Salvador is doing, and I think, experimenting with new technologies and seeing if they work or not is great. And whether this one pans out or not, we'll see. But I'm a big fan of what's happening down in El Salvador.
Well, are you a fan of what's happening in Washington D.C.? They
No.
just they just ended the government shutdown last week, 43 days, the longest one ever. But of course, things go missing. Things don't work. They came out and said last week that the federal statistical system may have been permanently damaged from the shutdown. October jobs and CPI reports are likely never to be released. And then now the Federal Reserve is flying blind as they go into one of the most pivotal decisions of their history. Yeah, I mean, what's the deal? Is Washington, D.C. competent at all from your
No.
personal experience?
Absolutely not. I mean, in one sense, you wonder, like, how is this possible? Like, surely they must be lying, right? But you can't overestimate the incompetence. I mean, some of these systems are still running on like Microsoft 1998 or Windows '05. They have databases that were programmed in COBOL. Like, this stuff is so antiquated that it's inevitable it will break. So did it really break? Is this some sort of psyop? I don't know, but honestly, I can't be bothered to care because all these numbers are fake, right? You talked about like the Biden administration and revising numbers, and of course that hasn't stopped under the Trump administration. Like, all the numbers are fake. So I would say just shut the government back down, let the states run themselves, and we'd all be better off. But of course, they're not going to go down without a fight.
Yeah, shut the government back down, but then we wouldn't be able to fly, right? I mean, at least that's what they say, right? I mean, that seemed crazy that
Well,
the
what's getting
world's number one
crazy?
economy couldn't
Yeah,
have
but
flights.
I think if you let it actually break, that you have private solutions come back in, right? Like, I think you're old enough to have flown before we had TSA. I don't know if I have that
Yeah,
right or not, but like, we didn't used to have all of this nonsense. And we could actually get rid of it and everything would be okay.
and everything would be okay. And we got a comment over on LinkedIn from Leon. Fun fact: the Fed is flying blind their whole existence.
That's right.
We got Pam over on YouTube. Really good insight from Michelle. Yeah, Michelle, you've been awesome. Thank you so much. We got people. If you are over on YouTube, hit the like button, please. If you're on X, repost this, like it. We're here every Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern. New guest, Michelle, your first time guest on the show. Really appreciated you. You're super fun to chat about these things with. And I'll never forget that you had an Interpol spy as a boyfriend at one point. Going under the tunnels underneath Washington, D.C. That's really something else.
It was wild, but great to talk with you. Always great to talk with you. And happy to join you anytime.
Cheers. Yeah. If people want to find you or Byte Federal, where should they go?
Yeah, so I am on X. I'm only on X. You can find me there. My profile is verified, so don't fall for any of the scam accounts. And Byte Federal is also on X. I link to them in my profile. We have a website that lists all our services as well, just bytefederal.com. And feel free to reach out to me.
Cheers. Awesome. Yes, you're a great Bitcoin advocate. Glad to have you on the team. And let's go Bitcoin.
That's right. Right
Let's
back.
go Bitcoin. Cheers. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for